The state of California is pushing high school football to the spring, and we need to talk about how that affects Korey Foreman and some of the top high school recruits from the state of California. And all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about how the state of California pushing back its high school football season to the spring with like playoffs beginning in April affects some of the top high school football players in the country. Now, for those of you that are new to recruiting, you should know that California produces the third or fourth most blue chip recruits in the country behind places like Georgia, Florida, and Texas, right? It is a huge move that we're seeing this trend. This goes along with the Pac-12 announcing that it's going to a conference-only slate. But more than that, this affects five stars like number one player in the 247 Sports Composite, Korey Foreman, TreVeyon Henderson at Virginia at a Hopewell. He's not going to play high school football this year because they're pushing theirs back. Troy Franklin out of Menlo also gets into this. Rajon Davis committed to LSU. Jake Garcia committed to USC. Tyler Buchner committed to Notre Dame. Now, I want to talk about what Korey Foreman said and get into what the California High School Athletics Commission said. So let's start with what he said on Twitter, finding out that they're going to push back his season until the spring. If they make me choose between my senior season or going to college, please believe I'm headed to my first camp, no questions asked. That's a tweet from Foreman. Now, there's a lot of ways to read that tweet, seeing as he's not really being explicit there, which is fine. I'm not going to read too much into that. I'm just going to say that it affects him like it affects so many. This 21 class is historic in that some of these guys aren't actually going to be able to play high school football. Some of the top 50 players might have an opportunity to go to an IMG academy or something of the sort where they're playing football, transferring so they can get a senior season in. But many don't want to do that. Henderson has decided he's going to keep working out and get ready for early enrolling at Ohio State in January. And I got to believe that's what many others are doing. Guys like Miller Moss and Jake Garcia also are going to have to make this decision. Garcia was already planning to early enroll, so it just looks like he's not going to have a high school football season. But let's talk about what California's High School Athletics Commission said. According to CIF's calendar online, the playoffs are scheduled to stretch into April, with sectional playoffs beginning and ending around April 10th to April 17th. But here's a portion of the California Interscholastic Federation's statement about moving the season. The California Interscholastic Federation has determined, in collaboration with our 10 sections, that education-based athletics for 2020-2021 school year will begin with a modified season of a sport schedule. Following this announcement, each CIF section office will release their own calendar to reflect regular season starting and ending dates and section playoffs. It is anticipated that most section start dates will commence in December 2020 or January 2021. We are continuously monitoring the directives and guidelines released from the governor's office, the California Department of Education, the California Department of Public Health, and local county health departments and agencies as these directives and guidelines are followed by our member schools, school districts, with student health and safety at the forefront. As the guidelines change, CIF sections may allow for athletic activity to potentially resume under the summer period rules of local section. This is massive once again because we don't know what the fallout is going to look like this. I don't think that we're going to get high school football in the state of California in 2020. I think that goes without saying. I don't think they're going to be included in this December 2020 deal. But knowing that the Big Ten and Pac-12 have already gone to conference only and we're waiting on more dominoes to fall, this is also a direct consequence of the recent spike in COVID-19 positive cases in places like Arizona and California and the like. Remembering that one of the first outbreak that we saw was in Washington, and it quickly spread to New York because plane travel. And we're also seeing places like my home state get spikes. Texas is spiking. We're waiting to see if Texas high school football is going to get played. It doesn't feel like it would, but if anybody is ever going to try to play high school football in this climate, it would be the state of Texas. Oklahoma's right there as well. Georgia's still planning to play high school football, as is Florida. All of these places have ridiculously high COVID-19 numbers. And while the effects of this are far-ranging, both economic and health-wise, I think it's important to keep in mind we're all trying to be safe. However, how is this going to affect recruiting? I can't imagine we're going to have an early signing period this year. It just doesn't make much sense. And even if we were to have an early signing period, we don't actually get the kids an opportunity to get to campus to figure out what they're buying here. We're seeing so many commitments happen without visits, and we're seeing Zoom calls be the ultimate decision in what a kid determines to do. The ground is what the ground is, and you have to make the best decision based on the information that you have. But I believe some judgment calls are being made that are going to be regretted at this time next year, but that's when the transfer portal is going to get on and popping. And we're making all these predictions about decommitments and how many guys are going to reopen their recruitment from places like Tennessee and others. But guys like Korey Foreman, who you wanted to see play high school football, are not going to get to play. And this is going to really screw up the evaluations for so many players. The opportunity for a guy like CJ Stroud to rise from 838th in the country to a top 40 prospect is out the window. Like, the closest we were able to get to that this year is Tyler Macon, and he wasn't exactly an unknown commodity when he got to Elite 11 or to start the opening regional places. That's to say nothing of what we expect to happen at college campuses. Now, the numbers for most college football programs as it denotes to COVID-19 positive cases is actually down, right, across the board. We've seen a couple of outbreaks. West Virginia had 28 since the day that they brought back their kids. Saw 37 at North Carolina. But by and large, they've done a good job. But they've done a good job without 20 to 30,000 other students on campus. And that's to say nothing of faculty and staff that are also going to be back on campus in August. And you would expect those numbers to go up. And if those numbers go up in a very big way, we could see entire games called off because perhaps you don't have enough players that you feel comfortable playing against whatever team. Like, I'm having these discussions about kids going both ways and how we're going to treat COVID-19 tests like injuries. But at some point or another, you don't have what you think is a competitive football team. And if you don't have what you think is a competitive football team, perhaps you don't want to go out there and play. I believe we're going to start the college football season, at least in the Autonomous Five, the Power Five, where they have much more to work with and they have money to buy tests. And one of the things that Oklahoma's been able to do is make sure that Missouri State is using the same lab equipment and the same protocols as they are. And they can afford to do that. Other places aren't going to be able to afford to do that. Like, I worry about places like UCO, Division II here in Oklahoma, Central Oklahoma. I worry about smaller schools like Arkansas State, who have had their game with like Michigan State called off, where they were going to make $1.8 million to keep their athletic department going. We need the games if we want to have our athletic departments functioning, but we don't need the games if people are going to get hurt and people are going to get sick. And I'm coming down on this going, what can you do? And if you can't do it, then don't do it. I just don't want to see anybody get sick. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. And you know how I feel about this, but I also would love to see some of the top prospects in high school football play. I feel for guys like Rajon Davis, who was going to have a last hurrah before going to LSU. I feel for guys like Jake Garcia, who was hoping to have a really great senior season. And it just sucks that this is a 100-year type of situation. Last time we had a pandemic of this kind, we're talking about the flu in like 1919. So we're all dealing with it. But I just wanted to get out in front on this and talk about how this is going to affect the top flight, and what it is going to do is really let us enjoy 2021 as much as we possibly can. All right, that's it for me. Deuces.